the average British woman lives half her adult life post-menopause.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
If we're not equipped with the information about what has happened in our body and our brains at menopause, it's much harder to deal with the health issues that may come as a result. Midlife and beyond can and should be a time of exploration and expansion. It's finding a way through the challenges. There is no greater power in the world than the zest of a post-menopausal woman.
Oh, I love that.
And I was so happy when I found that.
Hi, I'm Caroline Cary and welcome to the Eat Nourish Love Podcast. For over 20 years, I've created events, raised over 4 million for good causes, and been lucky enough to meet some incredible people along the way. This podcast is about exploring stories and insights that really shape us, with inspiring guests from wellness, business, self-care and personal growth. It's about learning to trust our intuition and discovering what truly matters, and how, with hard work, belief and tenacity, we can make so many things happen. So I'm really thrilled to welcome Susan Saunders, who's a health coach helping women over 50 build consistent habits, scientifically proven, to reduce dementia risk and optimize brain health. Now, Susan, I think this started as a personal journey for you many years ago with your mother. I think, she had dementia, for 12 years and you had young children. And so this was what started you on this journey.
Yes, absolutely. So I was 36 with a toddler and a newborn when my mum was diagnosed with dementia. And that was just such a shock. And I'm an only child. My dad had died a long time previously. And so suddenly I was juggling not just a full-time job and 2 tiny children, but also the care of my mother as well. So that was had a huge impact on me and my life and how I thought about my health and what I want to do. So really from that point onwards, I started to think, what can I do to reduce my own risk? I was caring for my mum as a teenager. I had seen her care for her mum.
Wow.
And I've got 2 daughters. And I thought, what can I do to reduce the risk of them having to care for me? So that was really my starting point. And I started to read all sorts of research, which was just at that point starting to come out. What can we do to help protect our brains, both now and in the future? And a lot of it was very contradictory. If you look at the headlines, it's all kind of, drink coffee, you'll live forever. Don't drink coffee, it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Or certainly that was what was being said 20 years ago. And so I just started to kind of inquire and investigate and research on my own to start with, to try and kind of make sense of that. And then about 10 years ago, I started writing a blog with a friend called the Age Well Project. And that became a book. We got a book deal, which was very exciting when you're 50 to get a book deal.
That's amazing.
I got a literary agent at the age of 50 and I just thought, wow, this is great. This is the kind of next adventure. So the Age Well Project book did very well. And since then I've written a couple more books too. But yes, it very much started with a personal journey, as I think it does for a lot of us.
I think it does. I think a lot of those things come from that. I think there are so many stories. And I think that's one of the things that's lovely about particularly the Power Decade book, is you've interviewed some lovely people here. Can I just ask you, what do you mean by the Power Decade? What was that? Where did that come from?
Well, that's a really good question. And that really came out of my research. I was really interested in post-menopausal health. There's a lot rightly talked about perimenopausal health at the moment. That's so important. But I was really interested in the years afterwards. And what I realized was that there's a window for women when we really need to focus on our health. The decade after the menopause transition, by which I mean the average menopause transition is the most important for women's health. So the average age, I know none of us are average, but the average age of menopause is 51. By our mid-60s, the chronic conditions of aging are more likely to kick in or to be starting. So that can be diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, dementia. We're much more risk of those from our sort of mid-60s onwards. So from, it's roughly a decade, sort of 50s, early 50s to early mid-60s, we have this window of opportunity to really take control of our health. And we need to grab it with both hands.
So I think there's so much noise out there. There's so much information. I think what you just said, that people said this, they said that. I mean, I really think it's quite hard for the younger generation, because what food do you feed? 1 minute's this, 1 minute's that, and it's the same with us. So I think it's navigating that space, isn't it? And the whole thing about perimenopausal and menopause is getting louder than ever before. And you've been in this industry now for a long time. Well, you've been researching it for a long time. So can you just explain, so anyone listening to, what is the difference between perimenopause and menopause?
Technically, the menopause is 1 day. 1 day, a year after your last period. But actually, we talk about menopause as quite a long period of life. And perimenopause is the time leading up to that 1 day. So it's when the symptoms start to kick in. And for some women, even who are having quite normal, not premature menopause, that could start in late 30s or early 40s, when you start to experience the symptoms of menopause. And there are the ones that are talked about a lot, like hot flushes, night sweats, that kind of thing. And then so many others which you don't even know about, and particularly the ones that impact our mental health, anxiety, stress, etc. So that perimenopause is leading up to that 1 day, and postmenopause is afterwards. And we are postmenopausal technically for the rest of our lives. But again, we tend not to think about women in their 70s and 80s sort of having postmenopausal issues, though I have clients in their 70s who are still having hot flushes.
Wow.
Doesn't always, I hate to say that, doesn't always go away. But one thing that's really important to think about is that the, again, average British woman lives half her adult life post-menopause.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time. And if we're not equipped with the information about what has happened in our body and our brains at menopause, it's much harder to deal with the health issues that may come as a result if we're not prepared. And I don't know about you, Caroline, but I certainly, as a younger woman, thought menopause was about fertility and ovaries. And that was sort of it, really. I knew there were hot flushes and stuff, but I didn't realise that it was a major health transition in my life. I didn't know that was coming.
But Susan, I don't think any of us did. I think that, it was sort of almost, when you were on through the menopause, you were sort of forgotten about, your prettiness and all the stuff that came in. It wasn't about how bright you are and your brain and everything else. It was about how you were perceived as a female. And I think the whole movement of that, and I'm a great feminist, but I also believe men have got a very big part in our, I've got a daughter, but I've got 2 sons, and I think one's got to be very aware of helping them through this whole transition too. It's not just a female thing. I think it's very much a dual role here. But you're right. People sort of, thought, and even there are moments when I go, I sort of mention my age, which I don't like to do very much, when you think, oh my goodness, am I too old to be doing this? Isn't that ridiculous?
Yes, absolutely. But I think we have been conditioned to think that, or there's certainly a narrative that sort of post-menopause our lives were over, and they're so not. We have so much life to live after menopause, but that has to be built on a foundation of good health, because those reproductive hormones that we've lost keep us healthy. They do so much more than just help us have periods and babies, if that's what we want to do. So they are doing so much in our bodies, and so when they decline, it's up to us to look after ourselves and to power up. That's why I called the book The Power Decade.
So let's just talk about, because there's so much in that book. Firstly, fantastic book. It's so easy to read. It's so simple. You've got some great testimonials, people's stories. Where did you find the people who did the stories in the book? Because there's some lovely stories in there.
Oh, yes. I've talked to some great power women I have been really inspired by. I have to say, I think I found most of them through social media, and by that, I mean sort of people I had built connections with, either through the blog, they'd found the blog, or you found me on Instagram, and you start having these conversations when you come across people who are going through similar experiences. And I think that is so important, that we build community in whichever way we do it. So this is sort of my community being put into the book.
That's a very positive thing. In fact, we met, we've only recently met, but certainly through social media, through these lovely girls, Kirsty and who are they? It's Kirsty and Angie. Is Andy? That's right. Andy, who do Rockstar Reels, and it's I don't know how I found them again on social media, and then saw you, and there's been so much connection. And although social media is getting a lot of bad press, I think there's a huge benefit, huge community in there that can be amazing. So what I'd like to go back to is there's an awful lot of information in your book, but so much of it is scientific. So where did that research come from? What did you have to do to delve into all that information? Because I think, if I'm right in saying, you also are, aren't you one of the first women who became a dementia? I can't remember what the word was. It dementia?
Yes, that's slightly separate. But yes, I was one of the first people in the UK to qualify as a coach with an American neuroscientist called Dr. Dale Bredesen, because my coaching practice, my health coaching practice, is focused around helping women to reduce their risk of dementia and stay sharp now, which is really important too. So that was my training with him. But I've always been really interested in research, and my career in television involves a lot of detail, and making documentaries. You have to be kind of very you have to get things right. And so when we started writing the blog, I had that background, and the blog, the Age Well Project, is very scientific, and I was very excited to delve into the science of what happens in our bodies as we go through the menopause transition and beyond that. But actually, what's really interesting is how little research has been done on post-menopausal women's health. It's catching up. There is more being done now, but really there's quite a slim volume of research specifically on what is happening in women's bodies at this stage.
It's actually quite interesting, because I know that particularly the AI technology coming in, that there was a lot of research. Listening to this girl who was talking about athletes and female athletes, and actually all the data that's coming up, because through the AI technology, is all about men and not females, because there isn't the data there. So, and I suppose it's very similar for menopausal women and the menopause, post-menopause, etc.
Yes, well, women are considered unreliable. So historically, women were considered unreliable subjects for scientific research because our hormones might skew things. So back in the day, a lot of research was only done, or the cohort that was tested was just men to remove the any issues that hormones might cause. And you have to think about how research is funded and all that sort of thing. If it's being funded by drugs companies, for example, they want a very specific outcome. So that's the sort of historical context. I mean, now obviously it is changing, and there is more and more research coming out about postmenopausal women, but it is a catch-up situation.
So I'd quite like to ask a few things. So, people talk about estrogen and the decline of estrogen and bone density. So can you explain what happens with the hormones and the estrogen when they go through the menopause, post-menopause?
When we're talking about estrogen, obviously there are other reproductive hormones, particularly progesterone and testosterone, that play a role. But estrogen specifically, we have to think it is not just a hormone of reproduction. We have receptors for it throughout our bodies and our brains, in the urinary tract, our heart and blood vessels, bones, skin, hair, pelvic muscles, and very particularly the brain. And you have to think about it as if it was sort of, estrogen is like a kind of protective cloak that keeps us safe and wrapped up and cozy during our reproductive years, when we are kind of very useful to Mother Nature, potentially. And then once we hit menopause and we can no longer reproduce, it's like Mother Nature has kind of said, okay, sunshine, you're on your own. I'm taking that protective cloak back again. And so that's why it is so important for us to really focus on our health in these post-menopausal years, because we've lost that protection. So that does mean looking after everything, our cardiovascular system, our bones, our brain health, our urinary tract, learning about the genitourinary syndrome of menopause was actually a real eye-opener for me. That's a whole other thing. So we've got to just get past the idea that estrogen is a hormone of reproduction.
And I suppose it's like everything else. So often science has looked at individual organs, individual things within medicine, and not the body as a whole. So it's when one thing knocks off. I mean, my father was a specialist in medicine, and the whole thing, he always said, once you start taking a drug, it starts knocking things off. It has a side effect to other things. So it's not as simple as putting a drug in and fixing it. It's not as simple as putting HRT and your life will be fine. It is, isn't it? It's about understanding that all these fundamentals, from sleep to food to diet to exercise to mental health to people to community, they all have such a significant effect on everything, and particularly the hormones.
Yes, exactly. And even for women taking HRT, we are aging. We can't get past that. So again, it's another reason to really be looking after ourselves at this stage. And I know it's hard, and I talk to so many women, I'm sure you do, who say, I come at the end of the to-do list. My health is a long way down the list of priorities, because they may be caring for elderly parents, they may have teenagers and young people at home, or they're responsible for. They may be working, they may be in a big job. I've got some clients who are absolutely at the pinnacle of their careers and doing very big jobs and trying to manage all these things as well. So there are a lot of demands on our time at this stage of life, and sometimes our health slips down the list. So I think midlife and beyond can and should be a time of exploration and expansion where we do re-find ourselves or find a new version of ourselves. And I know a lot of women are juggling challenges as well, but this can be a really powerful, uplifting time. Again, that's why I called the book The Power Decade, because I was just coming across so many women who were just doing extraordinary things as they came out of the menopause transition. And I really wanted to reflect that in the book. And it's certainly, in some of the women, with some of the women, I think all the women I interviewed, they were doing wonderful things and were finding new versions of themselves post-menopause. And I really think we need to celebrate that. And in fact, I start the book with a quote from an American anthropologist called Margaret Mead, who said, "There is no greater power in the world than the zest of a post-menopausal woman."
Oh, I love that.
And I was so happy when I found that.
So how did you stumble across that? That's so funny, isn't it, when you find something that just...
I don't know. It was just yes, just digging around, researching, and I thought, well, the zest of a postmenopausal woman, and I thought, I just hope we can all find that and re-energize. And of course, for a very long time, we have been tied to a monthly cycle, which is kind of literally draining us. And so when we say goodbye to that, it is freeing and it is uplifting. And I know menopause can come with many challenges and health issues and can feel absolutely awful. But also, I hope there is a light at the end of the tunnel where women can go, here I come.
I'd also like to talk to you about food. And you write a lot in the book about food and the menopause. And obviously you do an awful lot of diet now in relation to brain health, Alzheimer's, etc., dementia. Just talk to me where you are in terms of the food and what you advise when you're in your practice. Is it different for people going through different stages of their lives?
Yes, my diet is very focused on better brain health. And I talk to my clients who come to me because they want to reduce their dementia risk. I have a simple system of building what I call a better brain bowl. So imagine a lovely big bowl of food, and you're going to fill it up, and you are going to start with the veg first. I say to all my clients, start meal planning with the veg first. Because it's very easy for us to think, oh, I've got some chicken in the fridge, I'll cook that. Or it's pasta night or taco night, whatever. But actually, if we start thinking about the vegetables first, because they are so important to our health, whatever stage of life we're at, but particularly if we are looking at better brain health and post-menopausal health, what is it that we need to start with? We need a really good range of vegetables, and we're very conditioned to think of it as them as a side dish, as a spoonful of something on the edge of the plate. So I say, start meal planning with the veg first. Make that the kind of basis of what you're eating. Then add in your protein. Protein's so important for brain health and so important for postmenopausal women. We have to work hard to stay strong. So consuming enough protein, and I find very few of my clients are even getting a sort of basic amount of protein each day. Consuming enough protein and working to build and maintain muscle. There's two things going together, really, really important.
So I just wanted to thank Maggie Wellness for sponsoring this podcast. I have always been really lucky with my hair. It's always been full and healthy. I've never really needed much help. But then I was lucky enough to try some of the products from Maggie Wellness. And I cannot tell you, my hair is so much fuller, shinier, and it's growing faster than ever. If you're dealing with thinning hair, breakage, or hair loss, their shampoo, conditioner, rejuvenating serum, and supplements are designed to nourish the scalp and support healthy hair growth. What I really love too is that there are no harsh chemicals. Maggie Wellness products are 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and free from SLS, silicons, parabens, GMOs, and PEGs, and they're all in beautiful, sustainable packaging. So if you want stronger, healthy hair, why not try some of Maggie Wellness products? And you can get 20% off, excluding bundles, with the code EAT20. If you go to the bottom of this podcast, you can see the code EAT20, and there's the link. Just go back to a second. You just talk about protein when you say very few are getting basic. So what quantity are you talking about?
So if we're talking about a simple equation of 1 gram of dietary protein per kilo of lean body weight. So that entirely depends on your weight, but that might look like, say, for a petite woman, 60 grams of protein a day. So we're talking about 20 grams of protein per meal if you divide it up that way. So that can be a chicken breast, or it can be eggs and some smoked salmon and some cottage cheese, something like that for breakfast. So it's being aware of that and being aware of getting enough protein, and lots of my clients aren't. And the other thing I find a lot of women, particularly older women, struggle with is fat. Fat is our friend. As we are post-menopause, and as we take care of our brains, healthy fats, olive oil, avocado, nuts, oily fish, all that kind of thing are really, really important. And I have clients who say things like, "Oh, well, I buy nuts, but I just think, oh, they're full of fat, and I leave them in the cupboard." Or they'll say, "Oh, watch my husband eat avocado," and think, "Oh, I can never do that," because we are a generation of women who were conditioned to think that fat was the enemy. Fat makes you fat. And we were so misled by all those kind of low-fat diets of the 70s and 80s and all the low-fat foods. And I just think that's such a shame and so detrimental. And it just makes me really cross that we were misled by the food industry.
My father, as I said, my father was a specialist in medicine, and he had a heart attack at 40, and then had a triple bypass, and he was put on fluoromargarine. He was put on that worst diet that you can imagine. And I mean, and now I see it and think, my goodness, things could have been so different. But it was an industry. It was where it was. It's where the knowledge was. So I think the answer is always to look at these things and see how we can learn from them. We can critique them, and it's a shame, but actually we wouldn't know that we can do it now had we not gone there. And I think that that's often a lesson in our lives, isn't it? So you talk about protein and the green, and give me some ideas of some menus on food, breakfast and lunches and things like that, because I think it's quite good for people to hear what you do and what you advise as well.
Yeah, so as I say, breakfast, say 2 eggs, some smoked salmon, some cottage cheese. Might add some spinach, mushrooms into that to get the veg. You think about that. Or I quite often do a breakfast that is has blueberries and chia seeds, Greek yogurt, some protein powder. I was on the fence for a long time about protein powder, but I've decided it's quite useful. Oats for fibre. That's another thing that goes into my my brain bowl of food. Making sure we get enough fibre. So something like that. Something where I'm getting my fruit and veg and protein and fibre, and often something for gut health as well. I really like kefir. Quite often mix that into a breakfast bowl, or I'll have some kimchi if I'm having a more savoury breakfast. So that's sort of how I start the day. And then I really like making a meal that can be something like literally layering up my brain bowl. So it's sort of like salad or massaged kale. Big fan of kale. Massage that, use that as a base, and then add in some salmon, oily fish, really important for brain health. Some roast vegetables, get lots of fibre, more colour, phytonutrients. Polyphenols, really good for brain health and longevity. So you just sort of layering up, you wear all the good things, some olive oil, some nuts, that kind of thing, layering it all up. What do I need? What does my body need? What does my brain need? That's sort of what I'm always thinking. So it's that kind of thing. It's that kind of process. Lots of roast veg. I'm big on prepping ahead. What can I do on a Sunday for the week? What can make more than one meal? And things like roast vegetables, well-made salad dressings with olive oil or tahini, that kind of stuff. They can be used in lots of different ways. I think it's a bit daunting if you start thinking, oh God, I've got to prepare 3 meals a day from scratch. And then my husband doesn't like this and my adult children don't like that. And it becomes daunting. So if you can prep ahead, plan, have a few things ready to go, it just makes life so much easier.
It's honestly, I'm feeling hungry as you're talking. I'm thinking, I want to go and do my brain bowl now. It's so lovely. All those, I love doing things like that, and I like coming back to them. One of the things I love doing is I put I put salmon or chicken into sort of greaseproof paper, and I put lots of vegetables in it, and put some olive oil and seasons, whatever, put in the oven. And then if I've done 2 or 3 of those, I have them next day. And honestly, they're the most delicious things out there. But I think, I actually went to cookery school, and one of my favourite things that I was always actually used to win awards for was leftovers. I love leftovers. I love doing leftovers.
I love leftovers, and I think they're a bit. I think you rather think about leftovers, thinking about it's a wonderful meal plan.
It's quite creative, isn't it? It's quite creative as well.
Yes, and also it's just so reassuring when you can, if you're having a busy day, you can just go to the fridge and pull something out. And I think we've sort of lost track of that. Perhaps our grandmothers did sort of cook ahead, and in southern Mediterranean countries, food is prepared. There will be a big bowl of grilled peppers or whatever, and your food is prepared in a slightly different way. And I think we need to get back to that.
I had a girlfriend who said, "Oh, my husband would never eat leftovers," and I went, "Oh God, I don't know what my husband would do if he didn't do leftovers, because I love it."
Yeah.
So
I think that one needs retraining.
So we've talked about diet. Now, what about sleep? Because sleep is something, and I think that certainly that from the generation that I've come from, it used to be the Maggie Thatcher world of, 4-hour sleep. You were doing great if you had less sleep than everybody else. And I, to a degree, I can be very naughty. I can work very late and get up very early in the morning. But I am learning, and I am retraining myself to be better at that.
Yes, sleep is so important. Post-menopause, so important for brain health. And I also think when we're young, and I look at my adult daughters who can sort of throw themselves into bed at 3 a.m. and then sleep till 12 and get up and they're fine. And we're not like that anymore. The system doesn't work for us anymore, unfortunately. So very, very important to focus on that. And when I did a survey of women who followed the Age Well Project blog and asked them about post-menopausal health, sleep disturbance was one of the biggest issues that women were facing through the menopause transition and beyond. And often it's because night sweats are a common symptom of menopause, often a symptom that extends for quite a long time. And then your sleep is disturbed, so then you're tired, and it becomes a sort of a vicious circle of symptoms. And similarly for brain health, it's so important to try and get good sleep when we can, because when we are asleep, particularly in deep sleep, that is when our brain goes into housekeeping mode and starts to sweep out the toxins which build up during the day. And we want to get rid of those, because those toxins are linked to the buildup of amyloid, which is a protein that creates plaques in the brain, and they have been linked to Alzheimer's. So we want to do all we can to get better sleep, but we also want to not worry when we don't get good sleep, because that stress is as debilitating. And there's some really interesting research that shows that actually women who wake in the night are less likely to get dementia, which is very counterintuitive.
That's very strange, isn't it?
It's very strange. And no one really knows why, but there is a theory that perhaps as women, we use that time when we're awake in quite meaningful ways. We might problem solve, we might get up and read, potter around, that sort of thing. Don't know, but that is worth remembering. And I think, yes, you saying to someone, don't stress about not sleeping, but sleep is really important, is quite tricky. But yeah, we have to do what we can and let go of what we can't do, what we can't achieve.
I think that's a really important point, because I think, everybody's talking about morning routines and getting your morning routine right, and we'll go on to that as well. But, sometimes if you're quite disciplined and then you don't do something, then it's another reason to beat yourself up. So you've got to say, this morning I couldn't do it. That's absolutely fine, and I think that when you're doing routines, obviously the more you do them every day, when you drop a day, it's harder then to pick it up the next day. And I think that's always, that's what is is the difference between someone who's successful and someone who isn't, because actually they know how to pick themselves up the second day or when they've dropped a day. But I just think we mustn't beat ourselves up from these things. So talk to me about your morning routine and what you think is, or that's not fair to say what's right for everybody, because it's different for individuals. But morning routine is a really important thing, isn't it?
Yes, and what has been a real game changer for me, and it's such a simple thing, is making sure I get at least 10 minutes, ideally 20 minutes of light early in the morning, first thing. And that is something that I am very wedded to. And the reason that I do that is because when we get light on our eyeballs first thing, it kickstarts a circadian rhythm that reaches its end 13, 14 hours later by telling us it's time to feel sleepy. And if we haven't started that process first thing in the morning, we're not going to kick in that sleepiness later in the evening. The rhythm doesn't work as well. So we need morning light to wake up our brains and tell our bodies and our brains and our circadian rhythms, get going now. This is time to get going, and then we'll let you get sleepy later on. That's something that I feel strongly about, and I notice it if I don't do it. And I notice, one day is fine. As you say, 2 days, I start to notice it starts to impact my sleep. And my sleep has definitely improved as a result of that. So that's the sort of core thing. When I wake up, I make sure that I rehydrate. I make sure that I drink plenty of water, and I add to my water some lion's mane mushroom powder, which is a bit out there, but there's some interesting research around that and better brain health, better cognition.
So talk to me about exercise and the brain, and doing exercises and physical exercise in terms of body, because obviously bone mass, bone density is such an important part of in this part of our lives.
Yes, absolutely. And exercise is so fundamentally vital. It's such a gift that we can give ourselves, both for taking care of our health post-menopause and our brain health. And we really need to be looking at a combination of exercise. You can run marathons every day, but that's not going to help sort of build muscle or flexibility. So it's a combination of weight-bearing exercise, and that you walking, running, jogging, going up and down the stairs, strength training, using weights or body weight to maintain and grow muscle, because our muscle mass is declining. And then if we're thinking about bone health, balance exercises, really important, flexibility. I've interviewed a great woman in the Power Decade called Rebecca Rothstein, who is all about bone health. And she says, when you think about your bone health, think about your goal. Your goal is not strong bones, in inverted commas. Your goal is not to fracture. So what does that involve? So that is things like balance and flexibility. It's not the most solid bones in the world will snap if you fall in the wrong way. So what can you do to prevent that and work back from that? So it's really having that range of exercise. And I think perhaps it's a confidence thing. As we get older, it's easy to think, I really like that Zumba class and my friends are there, which is great and fantastic. And doing that and not thinking about how do I fill in these other things. Zumba's great, but what about strength training? What about flexibility, balance, etc.?
I think you and I both know a lovely girl called Wendy who does Reclaim Movement, who actually she's coming on. I'm going to be doing another podcast with her in a couple of weeks, whatever. And I love what she does, because it's about using your body every day. It's what we're supposed to do. It's And I'm not sitting here being critical of gyms and what people do, but I'm just saying is actually we can use our body weight, we can use our daily data from balancing, and you see her doing all sorts of things as she goes about her day. And it's not hard, is it? I think we suddenly think we've got to get our gym kit on, we've got to do it this way, we've got to do it that way, we've got to get in the car to go to the gym. Where actually you could do such simple exercise at home.
Yes, exactly. And just breaking up the day, particularly a day that involves a lot of sitting, with some form of movement. There's some interesting research about doing 10 squats each hour is better for blood glucose regulation than doing one walk for 30 minutes at the beginning of the day and then just sitting all day. So our bodies love that movement. That's what we're designed to do. So just little bits of movement throughout the day are so important.
Well, people have been talking about sitting, isn't it? We're all sitting so much more, and it's having a memory to sort of get up and move a bit more. And people have alarms on their computers, etc. So it's just crazy, isn't it? So I think one of the biggest problems is that everybody's listening to things. They're listening to reading books. They're listening to people. They're listening to friends. They're doing it. But sometimes they just can't make these habits stick. They can't, they'll try something for 1 minute and then someone tells them something else. How do you help them with their habits so that actually they're doing it on a daily basis so they see the difference and they're benefiting from it?
I think with habit building, which is so important, and when I'm talking about reducing dementia risk, it's really important because I can't guarantee that people won't get dementia, but I can guarantee people will build habits scientifically shown to reduce dementia risk. Habits are what we have, and it's a very small world for really what is building a life. It's really thinking about what do you want your life to be like and how do you want it to be. So that is the big picture, and you put your brain first, put your health first. What sort of life do you want to live? And then it's a question of getting granular about where are there moments in your day that you can do certain things. What can you do? I talk about habit stacking. So say, for example, we're just talking about doing 10 squats. Can you do 10 squats when you're attached to something you already do? So when you get up and get a glass of water, do 10 squats. When you go to the loo, wash your hands, do 10 squats, something like that. How can you add something new to something you're already doing? Essentially, that's a really simple way of building sustainable habits.
Sometimes life is quite simple, really. We always overcomplicated, and as you rightly say,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just. I was actually talking to someone else about that today, and I was talking about doing a certain exercise, and I said, "So you clean your teeth every day?" Absolutely. I said, "Well, do it before you clean your teeth, because then you'll do it. If you do it after, you'll forget about it." So it's that habit stacking. Tell me, I know I listened to something else that you did, and you've talked about intermittent fasting. Can you tell me what your views are on intermittent fasting and how it can help us?
Yes, I follow a system of gently time restricted eating. So I don't do a fast of, I do a day or two or whatever where I don't eat. I just have an extended period of not eating overnight, essentially. So I will stop eating ideally by sort of 8 o'clock in the evening, and then I will not eat again till about 10 a.m. The next morning. That works for me. That gives me kind of 14 hours for my body to kind of rest and repair and digest. And digestion is really hard work on the body. So if we can give our bodies time when we're not digesting so that it can rest and repair, because repair is very important as we get older, that makes sense to me. I'm certainly not one of those people who does one meal a day or that kind of thing. That's too extreme. And I do find with some of my health coaching clients, particularly if they are going through the menopause transition, that actually they've been trying to do time restricted eating, or they say, I don't eat breakfast, so I have 2 or 3 black coffees, then I wait till lunchtime. And they wonder why they're jittery and stressed. And actually what we do in my coaching practice is we pull back a meal so that they are eating earlier in the day, so that they are fueled and nourished for what the day has in store. And particularly if they are going through the menopause transition, then they need that. And I think skipping breakfast, I think a lot of people interpret time restricted eating or intermittent fasting as, oh, I'll skip breakfast. And actually, that can be the worst thing to do for your health. So it's really working on an individual basis.
I think it is. For me, actually, by not having breakfast, I'm fine with that. I just work very well, and then I have a late breakfast, so it would be sort of brunch, if you like. And I think if you get to know your bodies, then you've got to listen. There's so much more that I want to cover. Your book is full of so much fantastic information. I wouldn't even know where to start. Just a quick one before one last question is about supplementation. Do you supplement? What are the things out there that can help people through this stage of their lives?
There are all sorts of things. I would always say that supplements are supplemental. They are there if you're not getting all the nutrients that you could, but don't use them as a substitute for taking care of your health and you building a life that supports your health. I take lion's mane mushroom I mentioned, vitamin D3, we all need to be taking that. I definitely take that, especially at this time of year. It's so dark. Just get out the window, it's so dark. And it's the middle of the day. I always take that. I take magnesium threonate, which is a form of magnesium that helps me sleep. And I take a broad spectrum B vitamin. But it's very individual, and I think it's one of the things we need to take responsibility for ourselves. I think what do I need? Where am I lacking? And working from that point.
Well, I can't thank you enough for doing this podcast. And you've obviously got 3 lovely, amazing books. And obviously this is the book that I've just read, which we're talking about. For our listeners, before we finish, can you share 3 powerful tips that will help the people thrive through their power decade?
Right, gosh. Okay, I would say, number 1, put yourself first. We talked about this at the beginning. Where can you find the time and the headspace and the mindset to focus on your health, or to bring a focus to your health? I would say, think about your bone health. What do your bones need? How do your bones need you to be moving and eating and taking care of yourself post-menopause, because they are so impacted by the decline in estrogen? And be aware that menopause fundamentally changes brain chemistry. So what you need to be doing for your brain, how are you looking after that? And I would say keep learning. We've talked a lot about diet and exercise, but keep learning. Stay curious. What are you interested in? What did you leave behind when you reached puberty and then became an adult woman? What did you leave behind? What do you want to explore now? Go find that thing.
Do you know, I love that word, and it came up with Amanda from Thompson and Scott, and I did the last podcast. It's about curiosity, and I'm so nosy. I ask lots of questions. That's why I reached out to you. But it's fun, and I think that's half of it, isn't it? It's about bringing fun and enjoying it, and not getting. We all get a bit serious on our health, and obviously it's quite a serious topic. And I think I commend you for what you've done, by the way, on Instagram, because it is a service. You're giving consultant, so you're doing consultancy, etc., and counselling, etc., rather than selling a product. And I think you've done incredibly well there. But I think that curiosity thing is just so brilliant. So, listeners,
yes, and just finding the joy in that. I think, sorry, I interrupted, but finding the joy in that, finding the joy in what is to come, because it's there. Just sometimes we need to go looking for it.
Exactly. So listeners will want to know where to find you and what you're doing. Just give a little bit of a brief outline of how you work, where you are, and what you do.
So I am a health coach, and I work with women over 50 predominantly, to help them reduce dementia risk and build better brain health and stay sharp now, work through that brain fog if they're experiencing it, and build a life that puts their brain first. So I work one-to-one with clients in a 3-month program. I also have a very simple short course that is about eating for better brain health, feeding your brain better, and that's available all the time. You can find me on Instagram at Susan Saunders Health, and my website is susansaundershealth.com.
Well, you do amazing work, and I know people work with you across the world. It's not just been in the UK. So thank you for all your knowledge, and thank you for writing such brilliant books. And I've loved today, and hopefully we'll meet up very soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Caroline. I've really enjoyed it.